have decided to take this time to watch this lesson. We hope that it will benefit you as much as it benefits us. Come by and see us if you're ever in Hot Springs, Arkansas. We're located at 948 Airport Road, and we would love to be able to see you. And I said and mumbled to myself, "You are killing me." But he did not. He did not stay there. And what he did was introduce a topic for me that is kind of different than what we've been looking at. The idea of Forged by Fire is based on a television show. Any of you ever watched Forged in Fire? Do you know why this is not Forged in Fire, by the way? That's copyrighted, right? So we had to change it slightly. I like the idea of that show where you can take a piece of metal or even different hunks of metal that don't look like anything, and they can go through a process and make a knife that is incredible. And they can do that within mere hours, and then if you give them a few days, they can not only make one that is just as sharp as a razor and incredible, and it looks beautiful too. And so as you and I look at the idea of this forge, we need to understand that it's not only knives, it's not only axes and all those types of things, but another thing that is forged in that forge is armor. Armor in the ancient days, especially in the idea of the Roman world, was forged and it was handcrafted for a reason. They wanted it to be very stable and they wanted to be able to work it and they wanted it to be customized. You know what? My armor won't fit you. Consequently, your armor won't fit me. It was a problem that David and Saul had. You remember when David was going to battle Goliath, and Saul would say to him, "Hey, I really need you to put this armor on." And David would say, I can't do anything with that. So as you and I look at the idea of armor over the next few moments, I want you to understand that all we're going to talk about today is putting it on. Just put it on. When we got off of the plane, they put us onto a bus, and that bus ran from the San Antonio airport to a little gym that you might not know about called Lackland Air Force Base. And I was green as a gourd. I didn't know anything. I was just a dumb kid. And we came into the base and we rode around for a few minutes getting to where we needed to be, and it was dark and it was seemingly the middle of the night. Little did I know it was real early in the morning. And everything was going lovely, and the bus stopped and the door opened. And this large fellow got on the bus and he said, "Would you all please, if you don't mind, grab your things and exit this way. And let me introduce you to being what it is to be a United States Airman." In such a way, I think he talked about everything I ever owned and my parents and everything else. He yelled at us for a month. Anytime he ever spoke to us, he was yelling at us, and he was a mountain of a man. He was 19 feet tall. His chest was 4 feet wide. He was seemingly the biggest guy I've ever met, and when I met him on that night, he smelled like stale cigarettes and stale coffee, and he was upset over the fact that a few days ago I had signed some papers saying I think I'd like to be in the Air Force. He didn't like me or anybody who ever knew me, and he continued that process for weeks. When the Bible speaks about the children of God, it calls us the bride, calls us those who are called out. It calls us elect. It also calls us soldiers. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 2 or verse 3, thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Now, when you and I look in Ephesians chapter number 6, especially about verse 6 or about verse 10 rather, through about verse 17, 18 there, we look at it and we focus in on having our loins girded about with truth, don't we? And having on that breastplate of righteousness and those shoes of preparation and that sword and that helmet. We look at all those, don't we? I want you to back up a minute. Let me get mine out too so I make sure we're going in the right direction. Look back in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse number 12 through 14. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, and against principalities and against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, stand. Therefore, having, once again, your loins girded about with truth and all these things, I want you to focus in on the idea found in the last word of 13 and the first word of 14. Let me guess, you all know where this is going, don't you? If you don't, you will remember soon. I want you to focus in on what to put on. I want you to look at this in the perspective of the soldier of the cross and putting on this material. When this soldier is told to put this on, he doesn't ask if you would like to put this on, put it on. He says, put it on. Paul is speaking to them in a demonstrative manner so that he is speaking to them the way a authoritative figure in the military would be speaking to a group of soldiers. And he's going to say to them, put this on. First of all, it's not a request. If you're going to be a soldier of God's, and if you're going to visit that forge, you're going to be a soldier in that day, you're going to have to put on that forged armor. Put it on. Doesn't ask him if he wants to. Doesn't ask him if that's what he thinks he ought to be doing. He says, you're a soldier. Put it on. This is going to protect you. This is what you're going to need. So put it on. Well, I don't know what I'm getting into. Well, this guy's telling you it's fixing to be bad. Put on your armor. And so as he begins to tell them to put it on, he moves forward in that conversation that so many have in the military, where it is very one-sided in that conversation. And he moves on from telling him to put it on then to calling them to attention. That's where we find those two words. You see verse 13 and verse 14? No, because you're looking at me. Do you see them? What's the last word in 13? Thank you. Anybody else in here speak English? All right, what's the first word in verse 14? Well, that doesn't make much sense. You know how many times I've taught the teenage class that there are no mistakes, not even grammatically, found within the Word of God, and here we have, seemed to be a typographical error. Why is stand in there twice? That didn't make much sense, especially when you and I read it the way we read it. Wherefore taking all to stand therefore. It have no emphasis. You don't care what it's saying. All I need to do is roll through these verses so I can check off the fact that I read the Bible today. When you read this particular passage that way, you get nothing from it. Nothing. However, when you keep in mind the context of him speaking to soldiers, you have him, let's see, for all you who are faint of heart, It's going to get loud here in just a minute, okay? All right, just so you know. When you read this and you have him saying, we're going to have everything done so that we can stand firm, that stand in verse 14, he's going to call them to attention as a military. What he's going to say is, having done all to stand, stand! So, stand! That would be all of you who have put on the blood of Christ in battle. I'm not playing with you. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Be part of the army. You see what he's saying? Put on the armor and fight. Be an army. Stand up. Take a stand for God, the one who gave his life for you. Stand up. Now, when you read it that way, sit down. Now you have an idea of what he's saying. He's not saying when you've done all to stand, stand. He's saying stand up. Make a fight. Be a soldier and do something. Now he goes from there and he makes this implication. When you and I as soldiers put on this forged armor, you know what is not mentioned in verse number 14, 15, 16, or 17? And you say, the armor in the back. I know that's what you're saying because that's how you've studied it, right? All right, look through there and tell me when they can take it off. It's not in there. You're not commanded as the soldiers to take it off. You're commanded as the soldiers to put it on and fight. So there's a whole different level of what it means to be a soldier of Christ found in Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 17 that we overlook because we're looking at what we're putting on and what there's nothing on our backs. What we forget about is the putting it on, not taking it off, and fighting for God. Now, Todd mentioned it just a moment ago as he would say something to the effect of, you can agree to pick this study up later, you can agree to have a pause in it, but you never agree to disagree. You know why he made that statement? Because truth, as my mother would say, is truth even when the world's on fire. Now, do you know what that means? Let me tell you what that would mean. When Jesus returns and this earth begins to burn up and everything that melts there in there, the truth is still going to be the truth. And you and I can either be soldiers of the truth and we can stand on that truth and we can stand with that truth girded around our loins and pushing us in the right direction, or we can stand for something else that's going to burn up. And so we have to ask ourselves this question. What am I going to put on? And when am I going to do that? When we made it to Lackland Air Force Base, they took everything that we had off of us. They gave us new underwear and socks and shoes and hats and coats and clothes, and we didn't go back to wearing that old stuff. We dressed like a soldier from day one because that's what they expected. And what does God expect from me? Maybe that on Sunday and Sunday night and Wednesday, I'll put on the breastplate of righteousness and that helmet of salvation and carry that, get that sword out of my closet and clean it up nice so I can bring it here. But when I go out there where the real fight is, I just leave it. Just, you don't want to mess that stuff up, Is that what God expects? Or does God expect me from day one to put on the clothes of a soldier and act like a soldier? Well, the fact of the matter is this. He expects me from day one to be a soldier. He expects me from day one to follow the commands of the commanding officer. He expects me from day one to be in the fight. And He expects that from you too. We've looked at forging ourselves this weekend. And now we look at forging our protection. And it's necessary that we put that protection on. It's necessary that we understand we're going to be in a fight. It's necessary that we understand that God expects us to be soldiers and expects us to follow after His authority. And just as it would happen even today, it's necessary for us to realize as a soldier, finally as a soldier, you don't get to pick and choose which commands you want to follow. I wish we could have. One of our most dreaded drill instructors in basic training was a small lady. Yeah, keep laughing. And she hated everybody equally. But what she liked to do was run. Obviously, that filled some sort of hole inside her that was rather large, so she would like to go run a lot. We're going to go out here and run for 1,000 miles, it seemed like. You're thinking, there's no way. If I would have had that opportunity, I'd like to say to her, you know what, I'm going to take a nap. I'll catch y'all when you come back. I'll be refreshed, and we'll be ready to do some more soldiering. You know how many naps I got? It rhymes with 0. You know what number that is, Jace? That's 0. You got to do what they said because they were in charge. And guess what? You are not. Now let's apply that to being a soldier of Jesus Christ. You ain't in charge. The end. Yeah, but I want to. It doesn't matter. But what if I'd like to? It doesn't matter. Soldiers of Christ, arise and put your armor on. Don't we sing that song? Strong in the Lord of hosts, only when I want to do what He says. Is that second verse? Is that how that goes? Oh, no. That's not how that goes. Strong in the Lord of hosts and in His mighty power. Why? Because He is the source of our power. As we look at the idea of putting it on, when we look at ourselves as soldiers, and we look at ourselves as going through the forge, and we look at our armor as going through the forge, put it on. Get ready for the fight. Don't ever think you can take it off. Well, we ran out of time. So, we'll just put a pin in that right there. And what we'll do is we'll take a few minutes break and we will
Thanks for joining us. For more great content like this, visit polishingthepulpit.com or search for Polishing the Pulpit in your favorite podcast app. Also, be sure to check out PTP 365 for thousands of more videos just like this.